Hello students, welcome to EPG Patasala. I am Dr. K.R. Rammohan, Associate Professor, Head Department of Anthropology, Sikkim University. Today we are going to talk a module on post-structuralism. This module comes from the paper Theories and Methods in Social Cultural Anthropology. So before we discuss this module, let us see some of the objectives and learning outcomes. To introduce the history of anthropological thought by tracing its historical development of post-structuralism. To classify the course of historical development, academic and anthropological importance of post-structuralism development. To explore the formation and emergence of post-structuralism critique to the late 20th century, and an attempt is made to see the rise of post-structuralism in anthropology might be related to other historical and academic thought. Now, post-structuralism as a theoretical construct is a sequel to the understanding of the structuralism as an approach in understanding the social realities. So, post-structuralism, that means whatever thought which has been produced or the understanding after structuralist understanding is considered to be as post-structuralism, is basically a theoretical construct defined primarily by its opposition to structuralism. And while structuralism argued that human culture could be understood by identifying the structures that mediated between concrete reality and abstract ideas. That means reality and what is happening inside the mind. So that mediated between a structure. So post-structuralism generally find fault with this binary opposition, that reality should be understood only in the opposites, that is found within structuralism, and the self-contained explanatory and the causal relationships which are predominant thoughts of structuralism. In this context, post-structuralism is a varied and profound ferment of ideas and social forces which have given us competing angles of approach to the fundamental and divisive questions in all the social sciences, be it literature, sociology, anthropology, and other social sciences. Now, what is the historical context of this post-structuralism? So basically, post-structuralism is a style of, or it is a critique or a critical reasoning that focuses on the meaning or the systems of meaning as a way to identify. And the ambiguous space that is been left void. And the ethical choices that we make, whether social practice or in the writings of everyday life. And how does this thinking shape our social environment? If you look at again the structuralism from Durkheim to Levi-Strauss, that cultural phenomena could only be understood in the human cognition or at the human level, thinking level. Now, the traditions or aspects of jurisprudence, that means theory of justice, history, philology means study of languages, and sociology. Within this, anthropology has become an academic discipline. And post-structuralism argues that anthropology or anthropological work has been heavily influenced by the Western mode of thinking or the Western tradition of understanding social sciences, because this is all rooted in the Enlightenment ideals and Enlightenment philosophy. So hence, postmodernism has become a critical theory. We can also call it as a radical philosophy seeking a social change. While structuralism was popular during 1960s and 70s, which led to a lot of criticism, post-structuralism posits or gives us that to understand an object, it is necessary to study both the object itself and the systems of knowledge which were coordinated to produce this object. That means, unlike structuralism, structuralism says that all that could be understood through a model, only through the structures prevailing or how the social reality was structured in binary opposites. And but post-structuralism says that it is not only to, it will suffice to study only the structures. To study the object, we need to also understand who is producing this subject or this object. So subject and object both are important here. So structuralism looks only at the society in the present without regarding the past, completely ignoring the historical context and the development of ideas. Therefore, it did not understand or it did not give why society changes. So in this way, post-structuralism has conveniently positioned itself as a study of how the knowledge is produced, who has produced its knowledge. Another distinction between structuralism and post-structuralism is structuralism utilized a descriptive view while post-structuralism utilized furtherly the historical view in accordance with the theories and the popular claims made by the scholars. So, post-structuralism again stressing that it emphasizes to history or historical aspects to analyze the descriptive concepts to support whatever claims they are being doing in their ethnographic endeavors. So taking this structuralist critique, they're saying that all the anthropological theory produced by the structuralists, most probably by Levi-Strauss, and they want to improve this structuralist thinking to a new level. And hence it is becoming difficult to define. And it is often confused with whether it is postmodernism or it is basically a kinship terminology, or it is a patterned established usage. So it is up to us to see whether it can be put in the perspective. Now, the starting point for post-structuralism is structuralism, and for postmodernism, it is modernism. So it is nothing but it is a model of thinking or a mode of thinking, a style to philosophize certain things. That means how it came, why it came, it could have come like this, it could have been done like this. It is like a style of writing. And two important concepts emerge: the sign and the signifier. Sign is the object, signifier is the one who gives meaning to the sign. So both are important here. You cannot understand the sign without a signifier, and a signifier cannot give a meaning without a sign. In that aspect, postmodernism, post-structuralism gives more weightage to these two objects or two processes. Now, taking structuralism and post-structuralism once again, structuralism basically deals with the kinship, analysis of symbolism, myths to categorize these systems in terms of its structure, relationship between these elements. And structuralism seeks to isolate, to decode the deep structures of the meaning, organize it through systems of science, which are very much inherent in human behavior. That means the language that we speak, the rituals associated with us, the kind of dress that people wear. They say that the human cognition, the human mind basically functions on binary opposites. So human beings have the tendency to see things in two opposite directions. For example, day and night, good and bad. You cannot understand what is bad without good. You cannot appreciate daylight without night. It becomes redundant. So like all this, like men and women. So we can go on examples of these things. And the kinship, the whole kinship terminology and the kinship systems are based on binary opposites. For a structuralist, a kinship cannot operate without binary opposites. So in that sense, language, rituals, or even religious sentiments are constructed through these binary opposites. So the whole post-structuralism or the post-structural understanding is considered as a post-structural turn, which was evident from 1966 onwards, where the Critical Languages and Science of Man conference was held, which featured an important intervention by Jacques Derrida. In a famous book, The Structure, the Sign, Play in the Discourse of Human Sciences. So post-structural turn, which is famously called, looks into this: what is structure, what is sign, and play in the entire discourse of human sciences. Basically rejecting the structuralist theories of language. So Jacques Derrida, the most prominent figure in post-structuralist thinking, stressed the instability and excess of meaning in language, and the ways in which heterogeneity and difference were generated, meaning that it is not language per se should be interpreted more, but what is the actual meaning should be given, particularly through the text or any meaning given by an individual. So Derrida also questioned the structuralist binary opposition between nature and culture, which was profoundly given by Levi-Strauss and which was glorified. Now, with this thinking of critiquing this structuralist mode of inquiry, post-structuralist turn which has penetrated to literature, philosophy, art, aesthetics, and to some extent anthropology. Now, with this, the post-structuralist thinkers, the post-structuralist inquiry has opened and stressed that how certain meanings are embedded in the text, and it gives an openness to the complexity of the text and how and why certain forces have influenced it, be it political, ideological dimensions, and the excess creation of the meaning. So, put it simply, post-structuralist argument is open for multi-level interpretive methods, not restricting to only one level of interpretation. We can take n number of interpretations. Now, while the general assumption of post-structuralism derives from critique of the structural premise that we all know, more specifically, post-structuralist holds that the study of underlying structures is culturally conditioned, and therefore it is subjected to myriad biases and misrepresentations and misinterpretations. The guarantee and the authenticity they are questioning. For example, to understand an object or meanings of a text, once again, I am reiterating the same point that it is necessary to study both the object itself and the systems of knowledge which were coordinated to produce the object. So, in this way, post-structuralism is conveniently positioned itself as a study or a thought or a perspective of how this knowledge is produced. And again, they also question this structuralist mode of thinking that what is the proof for your claim that human mind has these binaries, human mind have these things? What were the evidence for these things? Rather, they say that it is all assumptions, as the fundamental structures of human mind are universal. So, Marvin Harris says that structuralism denies the impact that individual or given culture and that the possibility of scientific answers, which is given to only a commonsensical theory. That Levi-Strauss claims says that all human beings contains the same psychological ideas, but he did not give full explanation for these assumptions. And post-structuralists again question this, how human minds were identical. and how and why Levi-Strauss took only the synchronic approach, delimiting the diachronic approach and glorifying that there is a psychic unity of all the members of societies in this world. And it did not give the individual human action from a historical point of view. And this has no room for human individuality at one individual. Because the claim is that all human minds will function the same way, all human minds have the same structure, all human minds have the same similar thinking process. If this is the claim, where is the place for human individual thinking and thought process? Hence, anthropologists call into question the characterization of this discipline as a science, and which it cannot take all these scientific approaches. Now, post-structuralists call for to have more practices of representation. But to some extent, post-structuralism also had some kind of an attack that it is also delimiting human agency. To summarize, the post-structuralist understanding. Post-structuralist thinking or approach is a style of argument popularly called post-structuralist turn, which critiques the structuralist way of knowing, understanding the social reality, which takes on that all human minds have identical thought processes and the basic social institutions like kinship, myths, rituals, marriage rules, totems and symbols have common characteristic features in all the societies. Whereas post-structuralist question the synchronic approach of structuralist way of analyzing and categorizing social institutions. They leave room for more multi-level interpretations, taking the importance of the object itself and the subject which has produced this object in terms of sign and the signifier. And the most prominent post-structuralist thinker is Jacques Derrida, which stressed the importance and the need for deconstructing the whole social reality, not as a whole, but look into the subject-oriented meanings which are embedded in the text and which are equally produced by the people. So in that sense, post-structuralists deviate from structuralists, arguing for more heteronormivity and heterogeneity in analyzing the text and the social situations in the society.